So I've been a Yamaha artist for decades, and in that time I've owned or at least had in my possession almost every professional trumpet that Yamaha has produced since the 1980s. That includes the 6335H and the 6335H Mark II, including one of them that came with 3 interchangeable bells. The 6335RC, the 6310Z, the 8335 and the 8335R Xeno, including the 25th anniversary model, the 8330 Miyashiro, the 8335 LA, the 9335 Azuti, the 9335 New York, and the 9335 Chicago. I currently own the 8310Z, which is an updated version of the 6310Z, and now, for the focus of this video, the second generation of the 8310Z. So I'm a little late to this party because the second generation of the 8310 has been out for a few years. I didn't really feel the need to upgrade until now because the 8310 was my secondary horn that I kept in my office at school, while the 25th anniversary Xeno was my primary horn. But during COVID, I brought the 8310 home, and I found myself gravitating towards it, and if you've been following this channel for a while, you may have noticed the switch. At this point, the 8310 has become my primary horn, so it makes sense to have the most up-to-date version. I've been playing the second generation now for a couple of months, and in this video, I'm going to see if you can hear the difference between 2 iterations of the same horn. I'm also going to talk about and demonstrate how I check out a new horn and what I think is reasonable to expect when you plunk down the money for a new horn. Now on that subject, let me disavow the notion that as a Yamaha artist, I get free horns. It'd be very nice if that was the case, but the truth is I've paid for every horn I've ever owned, although truthfully I do get a discount. Every time Yamaha releases a new horn, my friends and colleagues at the company always make a point of getting it into my hands to try so that I can give an opinion. But I will say that given my record for buying whatever it is that I'm allowed to try, this could be a smart business move on their part. As many of you may know, the 6310Z and the 8310Z were both designed for Bobby Shew, who plays the trumpet the way that I'd like to play it in my fantasy universe. The most unique aspect of these horns is the step bore, which combines the efficiency of a small bore with the sound and the feel of a large bore. It's a light horn with no tuning slide braces, which makes it easy to hold and quick to respond. My first generation is lacquer, and the second generation is silver. Now, in general terms, I don't really have a strong opinion regarding lacquer versus silver. It does affect the sound, and you could hear that when I was comparing the 2 second generations back to back. But I waffled on which I preferred, and I think the main reason I settled on silver was so that I can tell them apart. Now, it's worth noting that there's nothing on the model designation on the horn to indicate whether it's a Gen 1 or Gen 2. Both horns just say 8310Z. The most obvious visual cue is on the sides of the valve buttons. On the Gen 1, they're smooth, and on the Gen 2, they're ridged like the valve caps. On an aesthetic level, I think that silver pops a bit more than lacquer when it's shiny, but you gotta work to keep it shiny because silver naturally tarnishes. Now, one question that's worth exploring is whether a given horn is intended for or most suitable for one specific type of music. For example, a lot of people assumed that the LA, which was designed for Wayne Bergeron, would be a killer lead horn. And in Wayne's hands, it obviously is. But Wayne didn't need a horn that was specifically engineered to play well in the high register. He's got that part of the equation nailed. He needed a horn that would cover all of the different things that he's required to do as a Los Angeles studio musician. And as a result, the LA is an excellent all-purpose horn, albeit one that will bark out the high notes if you've got the chops. The 8310Z was designed for Bobby Shew, who is a dyed-in-the-wool jazz musician. But I've known classical players who use the 8310 horn for their B-flat. And conversely, the New York and Chicago models were designed for orchestral players, but as a jazz musician, I loved playing the Chicago. It was one of my favorite horns out of all of them that I've owned. So I think the answer is that a well-designed horn can work for any kind of player, so it's really a matter of personal preference. Now, having played so many Yamaha trumpets for so long, I can say with confidence that you really can't go too far wrong with any of them. A lot of thought goes into every design, and they keep raising the bar. If there's something that can be done to make a horn play better, they do it, and the 3 generations of the Z horn exemplify that philosophy. I've toured the Yamaha factories in Japan, and having watched the various steps of the manufacturing process, I can tell you that it's easy to see why Yamaha horns are famously consistent. Honestly, I can pick up any Yamaha trumpet and feel comfortable playing it, and my history bears that out. The honest reality is that most professionals I know don't change their horns that often. Gearhounds are much more likely to be amateurs, and I can almost see some heads nodding out there as I say that. Even though I've owned a lot of trumpets, that's been over quite a few years, and when I've made a change, it's never because I'm unhappy with the horn, or because I think a new horn will solve a problem or give me an ability that I don't currently have. It's really just more out of curiosity, and Yamaha keeps bringing out horns that I'm curious about. There's also something to the idea that each horn requires something a little bit different from the player to get the most out of it, and I like that challenge. So the question for today is, how much difference is there between the first generation 8310Z and the second generation? Now, technically they're the second and third generation because the 6310 was the first Z horn. But for clarity, I'll just refer to them as the first and second generation 8310. The second generation, as you'd expect, shares much of the design philosophy of the first generation, but the updates do impact the sound and the feel of the horn in a way that was immediately apparent to me and to others who were listening to me try it out. Now, I've played enough horns that I can size one up pretty quickly. Basically, it all comes down to response. What kind of output at the bell results from the input at the mouthpiece. Starting with a relaxed, comfortable breath, I'll play a G in the staff and slur a chromatic scale down to low G. I'm warming up both my lips and my fingers with this, and I'm alert to whether each note feels like the ones before and after it. I'm also comparing the starting and ending notes an octave apart. With two horns that are so closely related, I don't really expect to hear or feel a big difference. Next, I'll play a series of octave slurs covering the second octave of the horn. Now here I might be able to perceive a difference in how easily the upper note comes out and the tuning of the octaves. Now, I'll start on the middle G again and slur a chromatic scale up to high D and then all the way down to low G. This is similar to the first exercise, but now with an expanded range of 2.5 octaves. It also gives me a sense of how the high register may respond. Now I'll repeat that same exercise, but I'm going to tongue the notes. That's a good measure of how quickly and easily the horn responds to a tongue stroke. Now I'll play some tongued intervals, expanding over the range of an octave. This is a good test for slotting, to see how accurately each pitch comes out of the horn when it's preceded by a range of interval jumps. Now, the owner-operator has a lot to do with how accurately the notes are placed, but some horns do slot more precisely than others. For the last exercise, I'll tongue a 3-octave chromatic scale ending up on a high F sharp. Now this covers the bulk of my working range, and after this I've got a pretty good overall sense of the horn. For a final demo, I'll improvise a bit on each horn. Now this won't put the horns to the test in the same way, but it might reveal certain aspects that come through when I'm focusing on playing music rather than on playing the trumpet. Now I have to say that having listened to the recordings, I don't hear as big a difference as I do acoustically. And I think part of that is that I'm filming in a small and acoustically dead space, with the sound going directly into the microphone with almost no room ambience. For microphone geeks, I'm using a Royer R10 ribbon, and there's no post-processing other than equalizing the volume. From my own acoustic listening perspective, the sound from the second generation is more forward and present, and the notes have what I would describe as greater density with a wider range of tonal color. In the upper register, the notes feel just a bit more locked in. Now these are subtle distinctions, and it's entirely possible that some listeners will actually prefer the sound of the first generation horn based on this demo. Others may not be able to hear any difference at all, especially if you're not listening through headphones. In person, though, there is definitely a difference, and for me it's enough of a difference to warrant the upgrade. If you buy an 8310Z today, it's a moot point, because any that you're likely to find in the stores right now are most likely second generation, since it has been out for a while. If you're currently playing the first generation and you're wondering whether it's worth it to you to upgrade, well, this video alone is probably not enough for you to make that decision. You'll need to try it for yourself, and I would encourage you to do that. Now, if you have done that, or whatever your takeaway is from this video, please let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear what you hear. Also, if you're enough of a trumpet geek to make it to this point in this video, then please make sure to leave a like. It's a little thing that helps a lot. And as always, if you enjoy content about brass playing or jazz, or you just like hearing about one person's lifelong quest to produce music from a brass pipe, well, you'll find a lot to like on this channel. So you know what to do.